Voting classifier is exactly the same idea as a stacking classifier in terms of the syntax. It's just that you have slightly different syntax. You don't need a final estimator because everybody's voting. So all you need are the input estimator. If you look at the voting classifier syntax, so to the example, you can see what's happening. So I'm on the sklearn voting classifier site here, and what they're doing is creating these three classifiers called CLF1, CLF2, and CLF3, and they're creating these outside of the, and then they're doing their data. Then they're creating this eCLF, which, well, then your estimators have the same syntax where it's a list of tuples, and each tuple is the name that you want to call that classifier, followed by the type of classifier it is. So up here, we created a CLF1 classifier that's a logistic regression, and we're calling that LR nation down here, whether you're hard or soft. So hard is just straight up majority rule. But in reality, your classifier doesn't just vote yes or no or give 0 or 1. Usually it gives a probability of it. So it's usually giving a number behind the scenes. 0.51 is yes as much as 0.99 is yes. So when you do hard, you're just crossing out the threshold here, and it's setting it exactly at 0.5. If you want to, if you have good classifiers that are working well individually, you can do what's called soft classification. Soft classification uses what's called an argmax. We can talk about another time, but basically this takes into account probability. And another thing that you can do is you can, instead of just giving everyone one vote or giving everyone equal input into the argmax function, you can set weights. If you had three classifiers, instead of equally weighting them, you could put in a weights equals something like 0.5, 0.25, 0.25, or you could also do it as ints. You could do weights equals 2, 1, 1. Also search over hard and soft. In jobs comes into play. If you want to do a voting classifier, draw your diagram and see how do you want to do it. Do you want to have like 50 decision trees voting, or you have a decision tree voting, or just a progression thing voting? You can reuse the same classifier with different parameters. You can also use classifiers you've never heard of before, just because you see them in the documentation. So you can use a naive Bayes classifier or a support vector classifier. Just try it out. What's the worst thing that can happen?